Hey everybody, BigBlackHatMan here, and today we're going to talk about number 6 on the AFI's Top 10 Westerns list. Huh. That's strange. Usually my, my dual personalities interrupted me by now, but he hasn't done it yet. I wonder what's going on here. Huh. Maybe I'm finally sane. Maybe my personality's remerged, I don't have to worry about a second person interrupting me despite the fact there's only one person, It's really crazy. Maybe I finally found sanity. Maybe I'm no longer out of my mind. Maybe that's the answer! No, that's not it. No, you just couldn't come up with a good opening bit this week. Yeah, you just failed to write. It's not sanity. Sanity. Well, darn. I was really hoping for sanity. Yeah, that's not it. Keep on dreaming, psycho. Yeah. Oh well. Today we're looking at, number 6 on the AFI's Top 10 Westerns list, The Wild Bunch, on BigBlackHatMan versus AFI. So what is The Wild Bunch about? Well, it's about the Wild Bunch, and I seem to be saying that a lot. Titular characters in classic questions, I don't know what the deal with that is, but don't worry about it. Next week that'll change. More specifically, this movie's about Pike Bishop, played by William Holden. And he's an aging outlaw who's murdered, stolen, pretty much every bad thing you can imagine under the sun. And now he kind of needs to wrap up his career because he's just getting a little too old for it. And not only is he getting old, but his gang is getting old. He has Dutch Engstrom, played by Ernest Borgnine, Detector Gorge, played by Ben Johnson, and Lyle Gorge, played by Warren Oates, and they're all starting to feel their age. They do have a younger member, an Angel, played by Jamie Sanchez, but he also has other motives, so he's not really with the group on some things. They have one member, Freddie Sykes, played by Edmund O'Brien, who's sold. He literally doesn't go with the group anymore. And if all that wasn't bad enough, they're being hunted by a railroad man, who's hired one of their former members, Deke Thornton, played by Robert Ryan, to hunt them down and finish them off once and for all. Well, with that all being said, they do make an attempt at a bank robbery early in the film, and it winds up in a huge action scene with a big shootout, boom, boom, bullets everywhere, yeah, flying like crazy. And then they find out they didn't actually steal anything. They only got a bunch of watchers. They were being set up all the time. It's kind of a downer for our main characters right off the bat. Unlike last week's Outlaws and Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, these guys are not charming. These guys are real hardcore outlaws. And they need to make their way in this world. They need to get out because they're getting old. So they head down to Mexico and strike a deal with a general. Now, this general's corrupt and he's fighting Pancho Villa and he might be trying to take over Mexico and he might just be a mercenary. It's not really clear on what his role is. But the point is he has gold. And so he makes a deal with the Wild Bunch. If they go and steal a load of guns for him, he'll give them a whole bunch of gold, and then, well, they can retire. And they also have to deal with Robert Ryan's Deke Thornton, too. He's going to be in their way because he knows where they're going, and it's a whole complicated thing. About a third of the way through the movie, they pull off this heist, and they do it really fascinatingly. I don't really want to describe it here because I want people to experience it. The point is they do pull off the heist, and there's more great action. Booms, explosions, yeah! And there's a lot of that in this film. And then we sort of settle into a more subtle part of the film, and there's a lot of exposition and talking in these parts, and a lot about age and being too old for things, and Pike Bishop thinking he's past his prime, and there's some flashbacks, and a lot of character building, honestly, in this film. I didn't really figure in before. But yeah, there's a lot of character building. And, well, they do get the guns and they get the gold, but things don't quite go according to plan. You see, Angel is actually an enemy of the General Mapache, who they made the deal with, and Mapache doesn't like him and ends up taking him captive, and then you get the climax from there, which I'm not going to give away to you, because man is it good. It is one of the best climaxes in Western history, and I refuse to give it away to you. And I couldn't do it justice anyway, because you've got to see it. That's pretty much the whole film. Well, this one's a classic for lots of reasons. I mean, it's really an interesting character piece with a twisting and turning plot that builds on itself, and really, a lot of things happen. And gunfire and explosions! Yes, it has a lot of action, but it also has nuanced performances by Holden and Borgnine and Robert Ryan. And blood and gore and death. Blood everywhere. Well, not everywhere, but they spill out and they hit. Bloody movie from 1968. Yes, it has blood. It has blood in it. I will acknowledge that fact. There is a lot of fake blood being spilled in this film, but it also has really wonderful, quiet character moments where they have nice conversations, which are boring. It also has sex. Oh boy, guns, gore, sex. What else is there? Oh boy. Okay. Let's get this out of the way. This is a Sam Peckinpah film. Yes, The Wild Bunch from 1968 is a Sam Peckinpah film. And for those not familiar with Sam Peckinpah, Peckinpah is known for violence and implications of sex. And in fact, in this film, there's a few bare-chested women running around. And alcohol consumption. He was also a well-known drug user, and so there's some of that in his films, too. So yeah, the violence is what drew a lot of people to this film. But here's the thing. It's not all this film should be known for. I will be the first to acknowledge Peckinpah got overwhelmed in his own violence sometimes, and I think it hurt some of his films. Major Dundee, which came out a few years before this, I think was more about the violence and the plot, and so it kind of falls apart at times. I've never been a big fan of Straw Dogs either. I know a lot of people like that film. Personally, it's just not one of my favorites. All that said, this film has a lot of great dialogue and a lot of great performances. William Holden had been on hold through the mid-60s because his alcoholism had basically taken him out. This was his bounce-back performance. This was William Holden just being great. The great William Holden from Sunset Boulevard, almost a decade and a half earlier at this point. And he's great. And Ernest Borgnine's great. And Ben Johnson, who was really setting up for his Academy Award performance just a few years later in The Last Picture Show. And Warren Oates, who's kind of underrated as an actor, does a nice job. And Robert Ryan is the antagonist, protagonist, depending on how you look at it, of the film. The film is complicated in its character, and the conversations in it are usually really good. I don't know that it's quotable, but you get sympathetic for characters who would otherwise be really bad guys. Pike, played by William Holden, is a terrible person. In fact, they don't even try to redeem him in any way. They just flat out say, this is a bad guy. But through the dialogue, through the character building, you get all the nuance of him, and you get to understand him, and you get to be sympathetic with him just by product of his own fears about age and what he's going to do with the rest of his life once he retires from being an outlaw. It's a very beautiful construct. It's a construct I think anyone who's faced fears can appreciate. So yes, there's a lot of violence and sex and alcohol and those things that, well, I think probably made the film a classic to begin with. But man, this film wouldn't work without the good plot and the great characters. So this is a classic because of those things, but it's been elevated and continue to be a classic because of everything else. Well, for my own personal views on The Wild Bunch, this movie's great. Liar, liar, pants on fire. I am not a liar. This is Sam Peckinpah's magnum opus. This was the best film he did. And this is not the only Sam Peckinpah film I like, but this was his best film. Beautiful piece. Is that really how you felt the first time you watched the movie? Well, maybe not. Oh, come on. You can tell me. Okay. The first time I saw this movie, I didn't really like it. Admitting you have a problem is always the first step. Yes, it's true. The first time I saw The Wild Bunch, a little over a decade ago, I didn't really like it. It just seemed like a really violent, action-packed Western to me that didn't do much. But then I saw it again a few years later, and I realized, well, no, there's actually a pretty intricate plot here, and the characters are good. And then I saw it a third time, and I thought, no, those characters aren't just good, those characters are great. They're deeply complicated, they're bad guys that we come to sympathize with. That's something. And there's no real good guy in the film. There is no protagonist per se. When you think about it, I mean, the Wild Bunch is our protagonist in many ways, but they're not good guys. And it's a well-constructed film. Top to bottom, the pacing's good. The scenes are good. And actually, the action fits in really well. The action is not superfluous. Now, if you watch the director's cut, which I have on Blu-ray, I will say there are a couple flashbacks that do hurt the pacing a little bit, and Peckinpah needed reined in sometimes. As much as he clashed with the studio heads, he could be a little out of control with his directorial style sometimes. The point is that this is a movie that grew on me. I admit that I didn't like it the first time I watched it, or thought it was ho-hum at best. But after seeing it several more times, I really like this film. It's a good film with William Holden turning in a great performance. And I know there are really no awards for this film, and the violence is probably the reason for that, but it deserves some, because it is solid. If you don't like violence, I could see you maybe not wanting to see this film, but at the same time, if you like character development, suck it up, pass the violence, and see this film, because the characters are just great. Well, the straightforward answer is yes. No. Wait, I'm usually the contrary one. Not today. Your initial knee-jerk on this film was no. True, but I rationalized and thought about it and really got in-depth and saw this film again. Come on! Tell the truth! Admit you don't think it belongs! Are you done? Yeah, sure. Okay, let's be fair. I can see this being a fairly divisive film on the list. I mean, the violence is off-putting to a lot of people. A lot of people didn't like that Peckinpah went against the grain in the late 60s with his films. A lot of people didn't like that he's borrowed from spaghetti westerns to make his films. A lot of people just didn't like Peckinpah. He wasn't that good a guy. In his personal life, he was actually kind of terrible. Though if we discounted every director who was terrible, boy, pretty much all of them be out. Except Clint Eastwood. I think he's actually a pretty nice guy from what I've heard. Not the point. Here's the thing about The Wild Bunch. It is a really good movie. It came out in 1968, so it's historically significant as a film that was changing the genre. It was Sam Peckinpah's best film. William Holden gives great performances. Almost everybody in it does. It's got a really solid plot. It's a really solid theme. It's interesting. I can't come up with a good reason to take it off the list. It probably belongs. Does it make a personal list? Well, much like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, maybe, maybe not. Not the top 10, I'm going to say. I'm going to say for me it probably wouldn't make my top 10. I just don't see it happening. I have too many films I have personal attachment to that I would argue that are better because of my attachment to them. That this would probably end up maybe in the 11 to 20 range. I'm fairly certain it solidly end up in the 11 to 20 range. Especially after I've seen it a few more times, and I appreciate this film even more as I've watched it. So I like this film. Rationally, I can see it belonging. Logically, it's not a bad film for the list. Whether the AFI got there by accident or actually, thought this one through, it was a good pick. Not a personal pick, but a good pick. Personal picks are sort of a nitpicky thing, though, as I've said before, and, as you're dividing things up, my knee-jerk reaction to this one does hurt at the fact that I saw it the first time and didn't really care for it. But maybe I didn't understand film as well then, since it's been a long time since I've seen this for the first time. But it stuck with me, so that is what it is. So that's all for The Wild Bunch. I hope you enjoyed this. Happy trails. Here's your number 5, and watch out for those rough patches. The straight... Whoa. Where did that come from? I couldn't breathe. It's hard to do a video if you're choking to death. I'm fine.